Hey there, welcome to episode 30 of the Boob Report podcast, powered by Helix Interactive. Today, I'm hanging out with Dr. Haley Steinhauser, a chiropractor and wellness coach. She helps make the connection between how the mind affects the body. Let's get started. Okay, welcome everybody. We are super excited today because we have Dr. Haley Steinhauser with us, and we're going to be talking about some mind and body work, and it's going to be very cool. I'm excited. Welcome, Dr. Haley.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, well, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into working with mind and body work.
Yeah, so it was just one of those things that kind of folded into itself over the course of time. I am a chiropractor, and through my training with chiropractic, and then also even some work that I was doing personally before I started school, just for my own health, I got introduced to the idea of how impactful the mind is on physical pain, physical symptoms, that sort of thing. So, as I was going through school, I was learning different techniques that kind of spoke in the same language as that. Because with chiropractic, it's all about holistic wellness, right? So, it's all about just making it so your body can heal and do what it's supposed to do with as little interference as possible, right? And then, but with that, it's not all about just moving and physical changes and things like that. It's about, okay, what else is impacting your health? Is there stress involved? Are there big life changes? Do you have trouble at work with your family? Like all sorts of different things, nutrition, like it's everything. So that training and that background and then the work that I was doing for myself and then with my friends, that kind of we all fell in love with the idea of mind body wellness and how impactful that really was. That's where I really kind of found my passion in making sure that I am doing as much as I can to help people in the mind body sphere. So that's how I came to be doing this type of thing, and I absolutely love it.
That's, I love it because your face is just glowing when you talk about it. That's
Yeah.
what I love about it too. And we met beforehand and talked quite a bit about my experience with breast cancer and then people's experience with a health issue or an injury or things like that, and how, connecting the mind and the body really helps going through treatment and then on into survivorship or whatever you're looking at.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes a huge difference because I mean, there's so many different layers with that too. Like for you were diagnosed with breast cancer, and then you had the journey of like healing from that, and now being on the other side of things. Like that's so many layers because there you can have to heal a lot of layers from in the mind body perspective just from a single diagnosis, and then on top of that, it's your personal individual journey through healing, whatever else is coming up with that you would benefit from healing as well, right? Because yes, there's the breast cancer diagnosis, and then who knows what else is underneath the surface that you will see as you're going through that journey, that your body is just kind of like, hey, let's pay attention to this little thing now, and now it's time to pay attention to this. And it's just such a interesting and very individualized thing.
It absolutely is. I mean, just the whole journey part of it, from getting that initial diagnosis, the surgeries, treatment, whatever you're going through, and then getting to the point where you're like, okay, you're cancer free, and then having to deal with the stress of going once a year or, however often you have to go. It's just really trying to figure out where you are to kind of line everything up, mind and body. And I think what you're doing is amazing because I think so many people don't really take that into consideration.
Yeah, and I love the point that you just made about like, so even after you're cured, like, yes, that's such a great moment, right? But then there's still these other things that I feel like could really bring up a lot of confusing feelings where someone is like, wow, shouldn't I be happy? But then also I'm still really stressed, or I'm still kind of stuck in this cycle of like pain or whatever it might be. So then seeing like, okay, well, that's okay, that's like normal and to be expected, and that just means that your journey is continuing, it's just in a different chapter. So
do you see people as you work with them, do you see them go through those different stages of, say, acceptance, or okay, I'm trying to protect myself, or how does that look for you with people that you work with?
Yeah, definitely. Because, and I'll just do a little sidestep for a moment and talk about some of the patterns that I work with specifically. The patterns are variable from person to person, but the idea is that your body is going to respond to whatever it is that's going on in the best way that it possibly can for the purpose of survival. Like that's the area of the brain that is causing that response cares the most about surviving in that particular moment. So then with whatever tools you have at that time, for example, like let's say with your diagnosis, like you have a set of tools at that time and you respond in a particular way. And then those tools are gonna change over time. Maybe you have people helping you, or maybe you've done work on your own, like whatever it is, those tools change over time, but yet you still have this pattern that you created pre that time. So then it's really important to then look at that, try to resolve it, and basically take the charge out of that moment so you don't keep having a body stress response now that you're in a different space. And that is something that you see over the course of someone's journey, right? Because they're going to be in a different spot at one point in time than maybe a year or 2 years later. But we want to make sure that those patterns are healing at the appropriate time, because you literally are doing your best all the time, which is something to remember too, right? So, and then as things change, you are just going to be responding in a different way. And we want to make sure that it makes sense for the environment that you're in. Like, for example, I commonly see, especially with someone who has a big diagnosis or who has something chronically, right? It could just be chronic pain, it could be chronic digestive issues, something like that, but something for a long period of time. There is a coping strategy, I guess you could call it, where you start to identify with that subconsciously. It's not something that you decide to do, but you are the person with this diagnosis. You are the person who has to deal with this chronic issue. And you identify with it because then that makes it easier to deal with, right? So you are helping yourself by identifying with that. But then you get to a point where, okay, well, you're in a journey where maybe you don't have to be that person anymore. Maybe the diagnosis is gone. Maybe you don't have the same type of pain or symptom. So then it's also important to look at that and be like, okay, well, let's somehow separate yourself from that identity, which is, I think, sometimes very enlightening, but then can also be very difficult, because then it can bring up feelings of guilt or shame or all these sorts of quote unquote negative emotions. But just knowing like, okay, it's fine. You can feel whatever it is that you need to feel. It's best to actually let yourself feel it, because then you can actually process through the emotions and go move on into these other steps.
Right. And you and I talked about this before we started recording when we first met. And that was something that I struggled with, is I didn't accept the fact that I had had cancer. And I didn't, I'd been through the bilateral mastectomy. I had the implants put in and all of that. And then 6, 7 months on down the line, I'm experiencing symptoms and pain that I should have been experiencing a few weeks after those surgeries. And so my physical therapist was like, you haven't really, stepped up and said, yeah, I had cancer. And so your body is letting you know you went through this, you need to accept it so that we can start healing.
Which is so important. And that timeline is going to be so different for everyone. Like for you, that it's okay that it went that way, right? Because you had to have that period where maybe you were just kind of like pushing it away, going through your normal life. You had other things going on. You didn't want to, you probably just didn't feel ready at that time to be like, okay, yes, this is what's happening. This is what's going on in my life right now. This is my journey. So then later, when maybe a couple more doors opened, you were a little bit pushed into then being like, okay, well, yes, I do have to deal with this. I do need to process this. And you had your physical therapist, fortunately, to help and be like, hey, this is okay. Like that, she helped you. And that's, that was your journey. That was your story. And it's different for everyone, right? Like yours was, okay, a little bit of denial at first, and then dealing with it a little bit down the line. Somebody else might be, feeling it really, really intensely. That can either lead to a positive experience or maybe a negative dip that they then had to like help themselves out of, or find more support to help themselves out of. So it's an interesting thing for sure.
Right. Well, one thing we talked about, and I wanted to be sure and discuss it during the podcast. And I found it so interesting. You were talking about your posture and how
Yeah.
you stand. And I had mentioned to you that I noticed I kind of went inwards with my shoulders to protect my chest. I had been through
Yeah.
this traumatic surgery, and occasionally, I mean, I'm 5+ years out and I still find myself doing it occasionally. I've had 4 surgeries in 5 years. So I do, it's a subconscious thing. And you and I were discussing that and how that can really, affect you is in your dealing with pain or dealing with what you've been through.
Right. I absolutely love talking about posture as it relates to the elements of the mind body connection, because I think that normally when people think about posture, they think purely ergonomics, like, oh, I must be just sitting bad at my desk or whatever.
Mhm.
And that can play a role. But honestly, I would venture to guess that most of the time it actually has to do with more of this mind body connection. Like for you, it was protection.
Mhm.
It can even be just like an overload of stress, because that curling in of the shoulders, even like that kind of makes it so your chin starts to come forward, so your head is over your shoulders. And that positioning is actually related to your autonomic nervous system. So that fight or flight, rest and digest response. The fight or flight is your stress going crazy, right? Normal stress is not a bad thing, but when it becomes chronic, which makes sense after something like what you experienced and many other people, like that chronic component of it brings your nervous system into kind of an overdrive. So then it's going to do things to survive. That's like that survival mode. And part of that is protection. And then that's doing a couple things, right? Because like this, yes, it's protected. Maybe it feels good, but over the course of time, months, years, even, that's limiting the amount of oxygen that you can take in at a time. It's making it so you're starting to get weakness in muscles that should be strong, and tightness in muscles that should be nice and stretched out and like able to activate and contract when they're supposed to. So then all of these like biomechanical functions are starting to not work like they should. You're not getting the oxygen that you can, and then that affects your mental health too. So it might even make you more prone to feeling like down on yourself, depressed, anxious. So it's this negative cycle. So then the coolest part that I think about all this is, because it can sound like, oh my God, that sounds horrible, but this is what I'm doing. But it's okay, right? Because then you can take that as, all right, well, this is my body protecting itself, which means that in this moment, for however long I've been doing it, been doing the best it can. But now I'm having this realization of maybe I'm ready to change this. And you can change it by saying, okay, well, for me, it's easier to look at my mental health and maybe do some mind body work, step into meditation, work with a coach or a therapist or someone to help start improving that component of it. And you'll be amazed that as those things start to improve, your posture also improves.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe that seems way too scary or far away or not like your thing that you're driving with right now. So then you can say, okay, well, I'm going to work on my posture and do more brain-based exercises to help your body start remembering, oh, this is what's supposed to be easy, right? Because if it's been a long time of you being slouched forward, it doesn't feel easy at first to have good posture, even though it's supposed to. But doing simple things like sitting on a posture cushion, doing like activation exercises of the teeny little muscles in your spine to make it so it's not just like consciously trying to remind yourself to sit up straight, but actually helping to activate the brain systems and your nervous system. So then you start naturally sitting up straight. And then same thing, you'll start realizing, oh, maybe my outlook is changing a little bit. I feel a little bit more positive. I can adapt a bit more easier when these stressors are being thrown at me. And through that kind of blend of those two things, you can even feel more safe because you can trust your body, you can trust your environment, you can trust that you're doing the best that you can. So then you don't have that automatic need to protect yourself.
Right,
So,
right. Yeah, I think I had the irrational fear at first when I first got the implants that I was going to fall and, they were just going to burst. So it was,
irrational or not, you felt it.
yeah, seriously. It just, it was just
Yeah.
one of those crazy things that kind of played over in my mind sometimes. But I noticed that, like you were saying, it was little things that I did. If I was sitting, I noticed that my posture wasn't good. I was trying to protect myself. So I would purposely stand up and walk around so that I was in line, with my body. And I would start focusing on when I was sitting to make sure that I was sitting in a chair so that I had to sit up straight, and it was
Yeah.
just little things like that that helped me quite a bit, especially, after each surgery, to really kind of help alleviate some of the pain that I was going through.
Yeah. And I love that. The little things are the best things, in my opinion, because it can feel so overwhelming if you feel like you have to do 20 things at once in order to succeed, right? It's not about that. It's about just little things at a time that help start building habits, help start building new patterns. So
Right.
that's fantastic.
And it's funny, I always say this, it's baby steps. I was
Yeah.
talking to someone about nutrition the other day, and or working out and stuff like that. And everybody's like, well, I'm going to set this goal for April 1st and I'm going to start, and April 1st rolls around and I don't start, then I get down on myself. And it's like, no, you know what? Why don't you just take a walk around the block today? And then do something
Yeah.
more tomorrow, and just, start with baby steps. That's my thing, is baby steps. Just get started.
Yeah. I absolutely love that, because that's so important, right? Because when you try to do everything at once and then you don't, and then you feel guilty, you're creating this pattern of, oh, I can't do it, I can't be consistent, I'm never going to stick to a diet, I'm never going to be able to be as active as I want to be. And then you're just really kind of destroying your spirit because you are like saying all these bad things about yourself that doesn't have to be true, because it might just be that right now that doesn't make sense, but a walk around the block, going outside to look at the sunset, like, it can be anything, right?
Yeah.
Like those little teeny things can be the way that you crack the door open, then the door comes fully open, then you're actually taking some steps, right? Like, and then you're all of a sudden you look back 6 months later, a year later, whatever it is, and you're like, wow, look how far I've come. I'm so happy with myself. And you can feel that gratitude for just the little teeny baby steps that are going to be different for you than somebody else.
Right. And and the thing is that you and I are both, there's nothing wrong with setting goals. It's
Right.
just set realistic ones that you can meet, and maybe by starting with those baby steps, it'll be easier to set some of those larger goals that you want to meet.
Yep. Yeah. It makes me think of that little picture or meme or whatever of somebody like reaching for the first ring on the ladder. But then if you just add in like 4 before that, then it's really easy.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I
So
love it. Well, so walk us through, when someone comes and meets with you, is there like an interview process? How do you start working with someone to help them, come in alignment with their mind and body?
yeah, so with the mind body work, there's always a chat initially, because and I offer that for free too, because I want somebody to, in my opinion, you need to feel comfortable with somebody that you're doing mind body work or going on a healing journey with. You have to have a connection. You need to be ready to go there with that
Right.
person. So it's just chatting and being like, okay, well, what is going on with you? And even if they don't know, and that's something that I like to point out too, because I've had some clients who are just like, this is what's going on, this is where I'm at, this is where I want to go, I just feel really stuck. So then they just need that guidance, and then we break it down and create a plan. Start with kind of the pieces that will impact as many of those like 20 things they want to work on, right? But then for somebody else, they might be like, well, I think I know where I'm at. Like, this is, I guess, sort of what's going on, but I have no idea what I want or how to get there. And then, but so that person too, like, that's okay. Like, you don't need to know the whole path, know the whole journey before you start. The fact that you're on the phone, or the fact that you're ready to like reach out to someone, is all that you need, because then we can talk and I can kind of guide you into seeing like, okay, well, maybe it's, again, like the baby steps, and maybe it's this baby step that we start with, and then that's going to open the doors and create the path for us. So that's how things start with working with clients.
I love it. I love it. And normally, is there a time frame that you guys shoot for, or is it just something that evolves and you figure it out as you go?
Again, it's different for everyone. I'm not very good at having like, this is what I do. It's so variable, but in general, for most people, it's helpful to work together for 3 to 4 months at a time initially, and then from there, Some people feel very ready and equipped to go on and work on their own for a while. Some people want to kind of just work at a less frequent basis together. But then for some people, it's helpful even just to have 1 month of like weekly sessions. Normally I do work with people on a weekly basis. So one longer session a week, and then kind of touch points throughout the week, different quote unquote homework or things to work on. Nothing overwhelming, but things to make it so like you are starting to use the tools that you are learning through our sessions, and really being able to see like, oh, look what I'm doing for myself. Look what I'm learning. Look at how much I'm changing as we're doing this work. So yeah, timeline wise, it varies, but
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that there's not like this strict, timeline that you follow, because you're right. Everybody's different, where they are in their healing process or just their whole body mind alignment. So having something that's a little more customizable for them, I think is key to help them be successful.
Yes, I completely agree.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So I think that when you're meeting with someone, what is someone, say for example, we have a listener that's just listening to this, and they're interested to find out, I'm sure we all need mind body work, but what specifically do they need to look at inside themselves? And again, I know we're all different, but just sort of a basic sort of questionnaire they need to ask themselves if they really need to start doing some work.
Yeah. So I would say just tuning in and seeing like, okay, well, how well do I feel connected with myself? Do I feel like centered, confident, like I know what my intuition is telling me? And those might feel like not very specific things to look at, but like that I think is a really good guidance of how strong your mind body connection is. So that would be one way to do it. But then it could also be just like, okay, well, what's going on in my life? Do I have a bunch of chronic pain that I just can't figure out how to take care of? Do I wake up every morning feeling exhausted and I just am not really sure how to juggle the million things that it seemed like is going on in my life? That could be an indicator too, right? Because the mind body connection, whether it's quote unquote strong or weak, isn't a good indicator of like, am I doing well or am I not doing well? Because that's not how you want to measure yourself. That's not helpful, right? But if you look at yourself and think like, I have been not happy with this area of how things are going in my life, or this area of how I'm feeling, or whatever that is, for a while now, and I'm not really sure how to move forward from that, then that would be a time to be like, okay, yes, let's try this out. Let's see if this is something that would make sense for me on my journey. Because I think it's really, really interesting, because I also work with people like in my own field too, because sometimes even if you have all the tools, maybe you're going through something in your life where you just still don't have the energy or capacity to be like, okay, well, I know what I need to be doing right now, but I just can't do it. I can't bring myself to do it without a little bit of help. So I don't know if that point made sense, but like sometimes I think that can bring on a lot of guilt and within yourself to be like, oh, I should be able to do this. I should be able to get past this. But you're not supposed to be in your life alone, right? So that's where the help comes in and can be really like mind opening.
I absolutely agree with you on that. And we talked about it too. I really struggled with survivor guilt for me, because with the type of cancer I had when I was diagnosed, I had 6 tumors, but I did not have to do chemo or radiation. So I felt like my journey was a lot easier than another woman's journey, because she had to go through chemo or radiation. And I had to take a step back and realize, yeah, my journey was pretty difficult. I mean, I had to go through a bilateral mastectomy, and I had a lot of lingering pain afterwards. Every person's journey is different. And I think that right now, especially over the last 2 years, with everything that's happened with COVID and everything else, people are starting to take a step back and really start looking inside and be like, yeah, you know what? I'm not happy and I need to do something about it.
Yeah.
Do you see
and
that?
I think, yeah, definitely. And I think it's a very good thing. And because I think that sometimes people get they remember the quote, or maybe they were told this from the time that they were growing up or like that. Somebody has it worse than you. Somebody is going through a different, or like a worse time than you. Somebody has more pain, somebody has less food, someone's got it worse.
Yeah.
So then the message of that is, well, you should just stuff it. You should just be fine. Keep going, keep trucking on through. And I feel like you're right. More and more people are realizing, okay, yes, other people do have it worse than me, but that doesn't make my story false. It doesn't make it so that I shouldn't take care of myself and lean in, nurture myself, love myself, care for myself. Because then that opens so many more doors, right? Like, one, you should take care of yourself. You should have the power to be like, okay, what I'm experiencing is real. So I'm going to do something about it, or I'm going to ask a question, or I'm at least going to feel it. Right? Allow myself to feel whatever it is. Because that's the only way that anything will ever change for you or for the world, right? Because if everybody always just had the thought of like, oh, well, I shouldn't take care of myself because somebody's got it worse, then everybody's just going to be suffering. Why would we want that?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, a woman said to me one time, you can't take care of other people if you're not taking care of yourself.
Yes.
I know how much you want to love and take care of your kids or, your husband, significant other, whatever, friends. But you can't do that if you're not taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
It's kind of common sense, but I think it's a
Common sense, but also difficult to grasp sometimes.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Well, Dr. Haley, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really appreciate it. This was just when you and I talked, off camera, off recording. I just knew this was going to be a really good episode for people to listen to, because I think it's so important, everything to be in alignment.
Yeah, it makes me so happy. Like, it always gives me so much energy to be able to speak to this type of work, because it's so important. Even if you're listening and you're like, oh, I don't know, this doesn't seem right for me right now, those doors are opening, right? So then maybe you're not going to step on this type of work right now, but at the right time in your life is when it'll happen.
Right. I love that. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. It was amazing hanging out with you today.
Thank you. Have a good one.
That was so cool. I'm here to tell you, once I got my mind back on track, it really helped with healing my body. A very big thank you to Dr. Haley. We have links and information where you can learn more about her and how she works with her clients on our website at www.theboobreport.com/podcast episode 30 show notes. And a very big thank you to all of you for spending time with us today. Be sure to like and follow us, and definitely share the podcast with your friends. You can become an active listener and support this podcast by clicking on the podcast link on our website at theboobreport.com. Take care.